Hi, my name is Jackie Dearson. This video is for EDUC 380. It is a lesson in comprehending informational text for fourth graders. Once again, I have the same pod of kids as my previous lesson and leveled the same way, all kinds of things like that. I have them seated according to their behavioral and instructional needs. I have a lot of things displayed on the walls, lots of anchor charts and lots of things. Of course, this would be a little more organized and I'd have a little more space to do this, but I'm doing my best in my house to make this as real as possible. So here we go. Okay, everyone ready for reading? Here we go. Today we are working with informational texts. And what's another word for informational text? Chris? Yeah, it's like our nonfiction, our real stuff. We're learning facts from this. Okay, so we need to remember, always remember our fourth grade standards, the things we're working on, right? So we're always, whenever we're reading, I can improve my accuracy and fluency for better comprehension. Every time you read anything, we're working on this goal. Then we have a couple of goals that are just for informational text, like we talked about. So it says, I can describe the structure of events, ideas, concepts, or information in a text. So that's just knowing all the different parts that go into that. Another one is I can work to read and comprehend grade 4 level reading materials. Remember, we're always working to challenge ourselves, but to make sure we're reading things that fourth graders should be reading. And today's objective for today's lesson is to use a variety of strategies to guide our comprehension. So there are lots of things, tools, and steps we can go through that will help us understand that informational text a lot better, okay? So if you look, we have all our anchor charts up, all these different strategies and things we've been working on throughout all of our reading lessons, okay? We're going to go back to all of these charts today. Today's focus is on a new strategy, okay? The strategy, this is a CSR strategy, okay? We're going to work on what we can do before we read, while we read, and after we read, okay? So within each one of those steps, we're going to use the strategies over here, okay? Don't get scared. It's a lot of information, but don't worry because I'm going to show it to you first, just like we do. Then you're going to do it with me, and then I'll let you try it on your own, okay? And this one doesn't want to stay up here, but hopefully it will just to get through this lesson, and then I'll do a better job of getting it stuck up there so you guys can see it. Okay, today's article is called Pioneers on the Oregon Trail. Okay, I'll pass out copies to everybody. Gail, Beth, Melissa, and Tammy. Here I have some graphic organizers, some steps and some things filled out, and little things you can remember that will help the process along for you guys to make it a little easier, okay? So, everyone following along, you should all have your copy of Pioneers on the Oregon Trail. So, our first strategy, okay, is going to be to scan. We're going to preview first. It says before reading, we're going to preview, okay? What does preview mean? Anybody? What's preview? Okay, if we break it up, preview. We're going to look at it before we view it. So, kind of preview is we're going to just kind of look at it before we start reading it. So if I scan, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for titles. I'm looking for things in italics, the different kind of font. I'm looking for pictures. I'm looking for these smaller headings, any boldface. Okay, those are the things that we look for when we scan. Okay? So if I scan this, let's see. I see the title is Pioneers on the Oregon Trail. Let's see, there is some boldface, The Way West, Packing for the Journey. Okay. There's also, this is called a sidebar when there's information on the side of the page, but it's also in italics, so that's two things. And it shows me it's a quote. Okay. There's a picture of a covered wagon. There is a timeline at the bottom of when things happened. Okay, that's all giving me a clue as to what this might be about. Okay, so now I can do the next step, which is to brainstorm. Okay, so I'm going to write brainstorm or brainstorms. These are going to be my brainstorms, okay? So let's see. Brainstorms. I use what I know in my brain plus what I saw when I scanned to figure out what this might be about, okay? Well, it says it's pioneers. I see a picture of a covered wagon. I know, because I've watched some cowboy movies with my husband, I know that pioneers traveled in covered wagons. So because it said pioneers and it had covered wagons, I'm going to brainstorm that. Pioneers traveled in covered wagons. These are things, that's something I know about pioneers before I even read it. That's my knowledge out of my brain, okay? I also know that the pioneers, from also watching movies, the pioneers traveled east to west. They went from the east side of the United States to the west. That's what I know, okay? So those are my brainstorms just based on what I know. I also need to make some predictions. So my predictions, based on what I saw here, what do I think this is about? Okay, so I look at the title and I look at the pictures and the headings. I think it's going to be about the pioneer's journey. Okay, I need all eyes up here. Remember, this is the time when I'm showing you, and the next time you're going to need to be able to help me do it. So, okay, this is your time to just listen. You'll get a chance to work through it. There will be time to talk. But right now, this is just a good time to watch me do it, okay? Okay. I also think it's going to be about, it's going to tell me what the journey was like. Because it's called Packing for the Journey, The Way West, I think it's going to be what the journey was like. And I'm also going to predict that because it says packing, that we're going to learn how and what the pioneers packed. Okay, those are my predictions. Okay? When we get all done and wrap it up, we'll go back to those and see how close we were to what actually happened. Okay? Okay. Next we're going to do something called our during reading. We're going to do something called click and clunk. I know that sounds funny, but when we're reading, we need to focus on what we understand and what we don't understand. Okay? If we can think about those things, it will really help us. So, think about this. As the train is clicking along the tracks, it's going along fine. Click, click, click. Everything's good. I'm understanding everything. But all of a sudden, clunk. I hit something. Okay? There was a big clunk. I hit something. I stopped in my reading. I don't understand it. That's a clunk. Okay? So, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to go along and read. And if we come to a word we don't know, that's a clunk. And we're going to work through what that word means. Okay? And otherwise, if I'm understanding all the words and we're just going to click right along on our reading and not stop. Okay? So, let's give it a try. I'm going to pick up my reading here, so follow along with me. Okay? I'm going to read just the first paragraph of The Way West. In the early 1800s, Lewis and Clark explored the territory west of the Mississippi. No one knew what they would find. As they traveled, they made maps. They wrote in their journals. They described miles and miles of beautiful land with tall trees, good soil, and rushing rivers. Okay. I had a clunk there. I'll admit. I had a clunk. I am not sure what this word means. Okay? This word is territory. And I said it right, just not real sure what it means. So, we're going to go, since I had a clunk here, we go over to our vocabulary strategy poster. And number 1 says to look for context clues. Okay, so I go back and, well, in sentence 5, it says they describe miles and miles of beautiful land. So maybe that has something to do with it. Okay, so I kind of got some context. But now number 2, I'm going to look for word part clues. Can I break this down? Do I see any prefixes or suffixes? No. So if I don't, then it says skip to step 3. Now we're going to guess the word's meaning. My guess is that it means a big area of land because I'm using that miles and miles of beautiful land. So I'm going to imagine that it means a big area of land. Okay, so I guess the word's meaning. Now my next thing is try out my meaning in the original sentence. So let's try it. In the early 1800s, Lewis and Clark explored the big area of land west of the Mississippi. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does. So I'm going to write that territory means a big area of land. Okay? Going now, what we need to do is our next step, which is get the gist. Okay? We're going to go paragraph by paragraph. So just in that paragraph, we're going to come up with a main idea statement. Okay? And to do that, we're going to go over here to our steps of paragraph shrinking. Okay? Our first step is to identify who or what a paragraph is mostly about. So in that first paragraph, I'm going to say that it was mostly about Lewis and Clark. That's what it was that's the who in there. Okay? And what did they do? They were exploring the territory, right? Okay, so then I need to identify the most important information about them. And I said that was that they explored the territory west of the Mississippi. That was the most important thing about them. Okay, now I'm going to shrink that all into one statement that's 10 words or less. So I'm going to try this and we'll count my words. Lewis and Clark were first to explore the territory west of the Mississippi. Okay, let's check it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Uh-oh, that was too many. So, how could we break that down? Let's see. Lewis and Clark were first to explore, what if I take out that and just say west of the Mississippi? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11. What if I just say Lewis and Clark were first to explore the west? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. There, I got it down to one main idea statement. Okay, next thing we need to do is go on to the second paragraph. Okay, we got our main idea. Now we know kind of what it's about. Let's move on to the second paragraph. News about the wonders of the West spread. People began to dream about a new life in a new land. And before long, they began traveling west on the Oregon Trail. At first, there were only a few adventures. In 1843, 200 families crossed the Oregon Trail. Then in 1848, gold was discovered in California. Soon after, thousands of people began heading west, hoping to make their dreams come true. Awesome. I saw lots of you following along, right along while I read. That's exactly what you should be doing. Awesome. Okay, so I didn't have any clunks in that. I understood all the words. I kept clicking along. All good. Okay, but I still need to, over here, and get the gist. Okay, I still need to do my main idea statement about that paragraph. So let's see. What was the most important thing? Okay, it was about the people. And what about them? Okay, that they traveled west on the Oregon Trail, right. So let's try this. People traveled west hoping to make their dreams come true. How many words do I have there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I got it right on the dot right the first time. So that's my main statement for that one. People traveled west hoping to make their dreams come true. Okay? Now we're going to move on to packing for the journey. Packing for the journey is only one paragraph. Okay, so I'm going to read it all at once here for you. Traveling west was not easy. The Oregon Trail was thousands of miles long and took between 4 and 6 months to cross. Pioneers had to pack everything they would need in a covered wagon that was not much bigger than a double bed. Once food, tools, and supplies for the journey were packed, the wagon was nearly full. As a result, there was no room left for personal belongings. But the pioneers left behind more than the comforts of home and their special treasures. They said goodbye to family and friends they never expected to see again. Okay. So in that one, I had one clump, and it was this word. Belongings. So I'm going to come over here to my vocabulary strategy, and I'm going to begin with looking for context clues. Okay? And the first, so let's see. If I look in the 6th sentence, it says, but the pioneers left behind more than the comforts of home and their special treasures. So I'm going to think maybe it has something to do with special treasures. Okay, so then I'm going to go for word part clues. And I see 2 parts. I see my root word belong and my suffix ing. So belong, I know that means when you own something. So belongings could be things that we own. Okay, so let's see, we did that. We broke it all up. We figured out what it means. Okay, so if we put the parts together, like I said, we decided belongings could be the things that we own. Okay, what a person owns. Okay, so I'm going to substitute that. So if I read, as a result, there was no room left for the things a person owns. Okay, so that worked in there, didn't it? Okay. Now, let's go on to getting the gist. Okay, belongings, and I'll write a little meaning up here for you. Things a person owns. Okay, now we'll move on to get the gist. And what was the main who or what? What the pioneers could take, right. So, I'm going to write the pioneers could only fit necessary things in the covered wagon. Okay, that gives me a good idea of what that paragraph was about. Okay, now I have all my main ideas. I know all the words that didn't make sense to me. I read it. I'm going to wrap it all up. Okay, so to wrap it all up, let's go back to our strategy chart. The wrap up, we're going to ask and answer questions and review what we learned. So when we ask and answer questions, we're going to act as the teacher would. Okay, think about the types of questions that a teacher would make for a test, the kinds of questions I would ask you, right? So, when we make questions, we're going to look at the QAR chart, okay? We want questions that are in the text, which are the right there questions, think and search questions. You can see it right there in your reading, right? Or we're going to have in my head questions, which means you can think about it on your own, you know a little bit, and you can figure out the question on your own. Or the author and me. That means after you read, you used what you knew, plus what the author told you to figure out the answer. Okay? So, our first question, and let's come up with a question we could ask. We could ask, and remember, our questions always start with what? Amy, who, what, when, where, why, and how. So our first one is going to be, who explored the territory west of the Mississippi? And the answer to that would be Lewis and Clark. Right. Okay, and what kind of question is that? How can I label it over there? It's a right there. Good job. I can see it right in the text. It's a right there. Okay? And when you do this, we're going to come up, we need at least 3 different kinds of questions. Okay, so our next one is going to be, what did the pioneers leave behind? What did the pioneers leave behind? Okay, they left behind personal belongings, special treasures, family and friends. Okay, they left behind all that stuff. And how do I know? I had to think and search. I had to look back in the reading and find it. Okay. And the last question I'm going to come up with is, why do you think people were willing to pack up and move west? Okay, the answer is they thought they would get rich. That is an author and me. I knew a little bit, remember I talked to you about how I've watched cowboy movies. I know a little bit about the pioneers, but the article also told me a little bit about the gold and why they were going there. They thought they were going to get rich. So that one is an author and me. Okay, that's an author and me one. Okay, now we're going to do this together, okay? I promised you we would practice it together before I have you do it on your own. Okay, so, oh, wait, back up. I forgot part of our chart. Thank you. Okay, Brian said, what about review what you learned? We did that, ask and answer questions. Thank you for keeping me on my toes so we don't forget anything. Review what you learned. Okay, in order to review what you learned, we go back to our brainstorms and predictions. Okay, so my brainstorms were pioneers traveled in covered wagons. Pioneers traveled east to west. That was part of the story, wasn't it? Yeah, that was in our article. Okay, my predictions were that it was going to be about the pioneers' journey, what the journey was like, and how and what the pioneers packed. And I think that was a pretty good prediction. I heard all of those things in the article. So I think that was pretty good. Okay, so we learned about their journey. It was a long journey. They could only pack essentials, so we did. So we went back, and yes, my brainstorms and predictions were right. It's just a good way to review. Even if these were wrong, you would say that, no, that wasn't right, I learned this. So it's a good way to review that, okay? So now you'll jot down a review, okay? When you're doing this on your own, you'll jot this down in your journals, and you would say, I learned that people knew about the West from Lewis and Clark. After gold was discovered in California in 1848, thousands of pioneers crossed the Oregon Trail in covered wagons in search of a new life. The Oregon Trail was thousands of miles long and took several months to cross. The pioneers could bring with them only what was necessary to survive. Okay? Okay, now, so that's my review. That was all the stuff I learned. Okay, now we're going to move on and do this together, okay? So, how do we start? We're going to do, let's see, flip the page. We're going to do wagons, ho, okay? And then it flows onto the second page, the next page, which is landmarks on the Oregon Trail, okay? So let's take a look at this. Okay. Okay. First thing we're going to do, let's come over here to our CSR strategies. We're going to preview. First thing we're going to do is scan. Okay. So what does scan mean? What are we going to do, Jason? Yep, we're going to look for headings. We're going to look for sidebars. We're going to look for pictures. Anything else? Amy? Boldface, yeah. Benny, Dennis, yeah. Italics. So we're going to look for all that stuff. Okay, so tell me what you see. Joanne. Okay, you see another picture of a covered wagon. So we're still probably talking about pioneers and covered wagons. What else, Chris? Wagons ho. Yeah, maybe it is more about covered wagons. Okay, Adam, you mean on the landmarks one? Yep, there's numbered spots, and they go with the numbered things down there, so it's different spots along the trail. Tracy, yeah, this is maybe their path, or what word did we learn earlier? Eric, their route. Good job. See, there comes a vocabulary word. Okay, good job. So those, maybe we're going to talk about stops along the way. But like we said, we know we're still talking about covered wagons and pioneers. Okay, so let's brainstorm what we know. Okay, and I'll write down some of your brainstorms. And I want you guys to grab your reading journals and do this along with me, because you're going to have to do it yourself after this, so you might as well start now. Let's get out your journals and do brainstorms. Okay. So, what are some things? What do you already know? Okay, oxen pulled wagons, we know that. Okay, what else do we know? Okay, Eric said he knows that Wyoming has rough territory. Way to use that word from before. Good job. Amy knows there's mountains in Oregon. So those are all things that might come into play as they're making their journey, right? Okay, how about predictions? Let's see if we can come up with some predictions. This is, use the clues and think about what this might be about. Okay, what do you think we're going to learn about? Okay. Dennis, what do you think? We're going to learn about wagon trains. Okay, that's a good one. What else might we be learning about? The trail. The Oregon Trail. Okay, good predictions. Okay, after we predict, what do? Where are we at? We scanned, we brainstormed, we predicted. Now we can go ahead and read. But remember, we're looking for that click and clunk if it doesn't make sense, okay? So let's start. I'm going to read, but I need you to follow along. And if there's any of those clunks, then tell me at the end of the paragraph, okay? Pioneers gathered at starting points between Independence, Missouri and Council Bluffs, Iowa to join up with wagon trains heading west. It was safest to travel with 10 to 15 wagons in a group. Wagon trains did not set out until there was enough grass growing on the prairie to feed the animals along the way. At the same time, they could not wait too long. The wagons had to get over the mountains before it started to snow. Any clunks? No? Okay, good job. So now we need to figure out, we didn't have any clunks, so now we're going to get the gist of that paragraph. Okay. So what was the main who or what? Joe. Wagons probably, yeah, good job. And what about wagons? What can we say about wagons? What else was important to know about those wagons, Amy? They wanted to get over the mountain. They left at a certain time to avoid the snow, right? So let's write Wagon, and I want you to write this down too. Remember, this is your get the gist. Wagon trains left early to avoid snow in the mountains. Okay, remember the 10 words. If you forget any of your strategies, they're all over here. This was our paragraph shrinking, right? We identified the who or what and the important information about them. Wagon trains and avoiding snow in the mountains. Okay, and we want to make sure our statement is 10 words or less. Okay, so it's good to practice. I see all of you writing. That is awesome. Thank you. Okay, now we can go on to the next paragraph. Okay, a wagon train on the move could be 1 mile long and 1 mile wide. Bumping along inside a cramped wagon was hard and uncomfortable way to travel. Pioneers often trudged beside the wagons instead. Consequently, most people walked slowly all the way to Oregon, nearly 2,000 miles. Anybody have any clunks in that one? Jamie, you did. What word was confusing to you? Trudged. Okay. So, let's work through it. So write this word down in your journal. Write down trudged. Okay, remember you're doing everything I'm doing. Okay, write down trudged. Now let's go over to our vocabulary strategy. First, we're going to look for context clues. Does anybody see a context clue? Chris, what do you see? Okay, in the sentence that starts consequently, he sees walked slowly. Consequently, most people walked slowly all the way to Oregon. Okay, so do we think trudged could maybe mean walked slowly? Well, let's see. Try it. Now we're going to go to number 2, word part clues. Break the word into parts. Oh, I can. I have trudge and ed. I do have 2 parts. So, what's the root word? What does the root word mean? That would be trudge. Trudge is like, oh, walk like this. Like you might trudge to your room when you get in trouble. Or if you were sent to the principal's office, you might just trudge there when you have to go do your chores, right? So, and ed means we already did it. Right, it's in the past. Okay, now we're going to look up here. Now we're going to guess the word's meaning. What are we guessing it means? Tracy. Walked slowly. Yep, we're going to walk real slow. Now we have to try our meaning out in the original sentence. So, somebody want to read that for me? Eric, go ahead and read it and substitute. Okay, pioneers often walked slowly beside the wagons instead. It does make sense. So we can put walked slowly for our meaning. Everybody write that down. Good job. Okay, now we need to get the gist of this one. So what's our main who or what? The wagon ride, I would say. Yes, good job, Nisa. Okay, and what about that wagon ride? Okay, what do we think about that wagon ride? What was our vocabulary word's a good clue? Okay, what do we think, Adam? What would be a good one? Okay, pioneers walked the trail because the ride was uncomfortable. Very good. Okay, everybody got that down? Pioneers walked the trail because the ride was uncomfortable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9. We're okay. We're 10 or less. Good job. Okay, going on to the last paragraph. Okay, as the pioneers headed west, they watched for famous landmarks along the way. Some of the landmarks showed how far the pioneers had traveled. Others were especially steep mountain passes or dangerous rivers that had to be crossed. Others were forts where the pioneers could get news and supplies. Okay, any clunks in there? Anybody? Nope, you all got the words? Okay, sounds good. It clicked right along. Good job. Okay, so let's get the gist of it. That's our next step, right? Get the gist. So, first we have to identify who or what the paragraph is mostly about. What do we think in this one? Jennifer. The landmarks. Yeah, I would say the landmarks are what it talked mostly about. And what about those landmarks? What about those landmarks do we need to remember? Brad? Yeah, that it helped the pioneers during their journey. Okay, landmarks helped the pioneers during their journey. Okay, so now I know three things, three main ideas for what I just read. Okay? Good job. Let's check it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We only had 7 words. Good job. Okay, now we have to do our wrap up. Remember, go back over here to our chart after reading, wrap up. So we're going to do our questions. So, anybody start thinking. Okay, remember, needs to start with a W or a how. Okay, Joe, you have a how? Okay. How big was a wagon train? Everybody write this down. How big was a wagon train? Okay, who can answer it? Who can answer his question? Joanne. Okay, 1 mile long, 1 mile wide, and 1 mile wide. And how can we figure that out? What kind of question is it from our QAR chart? Jennifer? It's a right there. Right, we can look and see that. Right there. Okay. Who else has a question that we could put up here? Chris, what do you think? Okay. What was important about when they left? Remember, they left at a certain time. Okay. Any thoughts on an answer for that one? Melissa. Okay. Before the snow. Yep, they wanted to beat the snow. What else did they have to remember? Brian. Yeah, they needed to make sure there was grass for the animals to eat. Okay. How do we know all that stuff? What kind of question is it from our QAR? Think and search, right? Okay, think and search. Good job. Okay, let's do one more. We need one more kind of question from here. Anybody have anything? Chuck, what do you think? Oh, good question. Chuck's going to have us thinking. What do you think? And what do you think is a giveaway for what kind of question it is? What do you think would be the most challenging landmark? Okay. So, we can look back at our landmarks. Which one do we think? Or what? Give me some thoughts. This is what do you think? Brad, what do you think? Okay, Brad says Laurel Hill. It says right there it was one of the most terrifying parts of the journey. But what else do we know about? Okay, Laurel Hill must be a pretty large hill. Brad says he knows it's a pretty big hill. Okay. Okay, Laurel Hill. Okay, good job. And we know that. How do you know that? What kind of question is it? Author and me, right. There was some things Brad knew and some things he learned from the reading. Good job. Okay, now we can go on to review what we learned. Okay? Review what you learned is the last step here. So we're going to go back to our brainstorms and predictions, right? Let's look at them. Okay, our brainstorms were that oxen pulled wagons. Okay, wasn't a whole lot about that, but that's okay. We learned that they had to make sure that animals do pull it. They had to make sure they had grass for the animals to eat. What else? Wyoming was rough territory. Oregon has mountains. We did kind of learn about what they had to face and what they had to go through. Okay. Predictions was that it's about wagon trains. Yeah, we learned a little bit more about wagon trains. And we did learn more about the trail because we had the route and some of the major landmarks along the way. Okay, so think about what you could write for your review. Here's an idea. Follow along with me. For safety, wagons traveled in big groups called trains. Timing of the trip was very important because the animals needed to graze. The trip was long and uncomfortable, and many people walked. Landmarks were important in guiding and supporting the journey. And if you will notice, a lot of that sounded like our gist and main idea statements. I just added a little bit more detail to it. Okay? But do you see you can kind of use those gist and main idea statements to help you bring it all together into a review. Okay, very good. Now, we are going to go ahead and I'm going to let you try this all on your own. Okay, you're going to do, let's see, where are the two sections that you're going to do? Okay, what's left? If you turn to the final page, you'll see there's a section called the day on the trail and the end of the trail. Okay, so those are the two you're going to do. You're going to use your reading journals. You get to have a partner's help with this. Don't worry, but I'll tell you which partner in just a minute. But you're going to go through all the same thing. I did this up here, the exact same thing. Then we did this down here, okay? So you're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to start by scanning it, get your brainstorms and predictions down. Then you'll start reading and you'll look for those clicks and clunks. If you have any clunks, work through it. Remember, you're going to use your vocabulary strategy. Then you're going to work to get the gist of it, and you'll use the steps of paragraph shrinking, right? Okay, get the gist, and then we're going to do our wrap-up, and for that one you need to ask and answer questions. Remember, we need 3 out of the 4 kinds of questions, and then go through and do your review of what you learned. And remember, that's a little paragraph about what you learned, and the gist statements will really help you with that one. Okay? For partners today, you're going to stay in your pods. But remember, we all have numbers within our pods. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1s and 2s are going to work together. 3s and 4s are going to work together. Okay? Work real hard at this. I'll circulate around if you need any help. And I can answer questions. I can help you through some of these strategies. All of this is up here for you to look through. So if you need help, I'll go around and give help where I can. Otherwise, I know you guys can do it. Help your partner out. Be a good partner. And remember our rules of partner working. And we're going to go over this tomorrow. We won't have time today, so work through. You should have time to get it finished before recess, but we'll go over it tomorrow. Okay, good job today.